why, or we'll try to figure it out, why people hurt other people. Good luck. The world was shocked in 1993 when a body of a 2-year-old boy was found brutally beaten to death. Two 10-year-old boys were implicated in the crime by the security camera footage, and this is the security camera footage. Here they are targeting the individual, and here is one of the boys leading the 2-year-old out. That's what the 2-year-old looked like. The case of the beating to death of James Bulger confounded police initially because the blows were not characteristically severe enough to indicate an adult. The world celebrated the destruction of the Berlin Wall in 1989. Not 3 years later, with the increase of unemployment from East Germany, 40 hate groups sprung up to protest the immigration. In Rostock in 1992, 45 Turkish immigrants were burned to death in the firebombing by German skinheads. Tension between the majority Hutu and the ruling Tutsi of Rwanda had been going on for centuries. Periodic massacres had taken place between the military, the Tutsi, and the Hutu. In 1994, when a Hutu government came to power, the Hutu went on a rampage that took 750,000 lives, mostly Tutsi. Researchers were shocked to discover that a Canadian survey in 1994 showed that 29% of married women had experienced physical and sexual assault from their spouses. The Canadian image of politeness took a heavy blow. The 1990s were a time of increased police presence in the United States and a decrease in crime. However, sensational crime still gripped the headlines. Foreign tourists were robbed and murdered from the airport in Florida. Germans seemed to be prime targets. Ranting teens assaulted women in New York City, especially in Central Park at night. 29 students and teachers were killed from 1997 to 1999 in student shootings in Kentucky, Oregon, Mississippi, and Colorado. $2 billion a day is spent on arms and armies in the world. In the last 100 years, 250 wars have been fought worldwide at the cost of 110 million lives. Whereas wars prior to the 20th century tended to be between armies, at least when Europeans were fighting other Europeans. In the 20th century, man learned to make war on entire populations. Aggression is physical or verbal behavior intended to hurt someone. Psychologists identify two types of aggression: hostile aggression and instrumental aggression. Hostile aggression is aggression driven by anger and performed as an end in itself. This type of aggression is also called affective aggression. Instrumental aggression is a means to some other end other than injuring the other individual. A child seizing a toy would be instrumental aggression. As soon as he gets the toy, the aggression will stop. Most murders represent hostile aggression by someone who knows the victim, all too often someone who is or was romantically involved with the victim. Instrumental aggression occurs in murders when the death of the victim furthers the murderers, as in the case of the cold, calculated killings of crime syndicates. The question that many people have asked over the course of humanity is, are humans instinctually aggressive, or is it society that makes them aggressive? Rousseau felt that society made people aggressive, but Freud in his theory sided with Darwin. Human aggression is the extension of the animal instinct that we cannot control. The instinct theory follows the Freudian and Darwinian concept that man is just as aggressive as any animal due to instincts. Darwin and later Freud and Lorenz saw aggression as more adaptive than destructive. Just as males in species will be territorial, humans are selectively territorial as well, protecting their food sources and reproductive potential. However, detractors of the instinct theory argue that there are variations of aggression in different cultures. The detractors also point out that different instinct theorists have identified over 14,000 instincts, though this was done mostly before the 1930s. Most of them have been disproven over time. The neural aspect of aggression can be studied in both human and animals. Mapping the pathway of aggression, researchers have discovered that human aggressive response is very similar to that of the lowest vertebrates. Thus, aggression is as old as the reptilian brain. Research shows that people who perpetrate egregiously horrendous crimes found that the prefrontal lobe, which acts to reason control of aggression, is 14% smaller in murderers and 15% smaller in antisocial men. And you may ask yourself, now how in the world do their frontal lobes get smaller? Is it the fact that some people are born with small prefrontal cortexes, their frontal lobes are smaller just naturally? And the answer is no. There are some that are, but most of the murderers and the antisocial men have normal brains. So what causes their brains to be smaller? And that has to do with blows to the front of the head. Genetic influences, heredity influences the neural system's sensitivity to aggressive cues. Research with other species shows that aggression can be bred out of the species through selective breeding over several generations. And I'm going to show you an example in just a second. When pedigrees are uncertain or wild species such as wolves are introduced, the outcome can be tragic, as is evidenced by the 4.5 million dog attacks per year. In 2010, there were 34 fatal dog attacks on humans. Most of the 4.5 million victims were children. Half had been bitten in the face, which is what the dog goes after. From 1982 to 2006, the Presa Canario were involved in only 30 attacks, but 6 of them led to death. And the Presa Canario is a very large dog, as you can see. Between 1982 and 2006, German Shepherd and German Shepherd mixes were involved in 94 attacks, and 13 resulted in death. Between 1982 and 2006, pit bulls were involved in 1,110 attacks, and 104 resulted in death. Between 1982 and 2006, Rottweilers were involved in 409 attacks, and 58 resulted in death. These are foxes. This is a case where the Russian scientists have been able to make foxes very aggressive or make them as docile as puppies. And these are the docile ones. Normally what they were doing, they were raising the foxes, and they were trying to get rid of the aggressive genes, and they were able to do that. So they actually made pets out of foxes. And as you can see, they're all different colors. And we're going to talk about that right now. Or maybe we aren't. Nope, I guess we're not. Okay. One of the things they discovered was that there were certain aspects of the foxes that if they bred in floppy ears, that they were less aggressive. If they bred in different colors than the natural wild color, then they were more docile as well. And as you can see, we have 2 gray ones and 2 black, white and black ones, and then we have the original fox colored one. It's a red fox from Europe. The red fox actually is not native to the United States, despite the fact that it's everywhere in the United States. It was brought over to, as stupid as this sounds, they brought it over because they wanted to chase them. They wanted to hunt them. So they released some foxes on the East Coast, and they've spread all over the United States, as dumb as that sounds. It's not the only time that we've made that kind of stupid mistake. They did the same thing with sparrows, English sparrows. Some of the sparrows in the United States are native to the United States, but English sparrows, and you can tell an English sparrow by the black on its face under its bill, is not native to the United States, nor is the starling, which is everywhere. Biochemical influences, blood chemistry will change neural sensitivity. Research in police records indicate that violent people are more likely to drink. Violent people are more likely to become aggressive when they become intoxicated. Intoxicated people are more likely to give a stronger shock when instructed to shock a person. They get angrier when they think about relationship conflicts. 4 in 10 violent crimes are committed by people who have been drinking. Just over half of the rapists have been drinking before they commit their offense. 80% of the women in college survey who report unwanted intercourse have been drinking or taking drugs before the sexual attack. In 65% of homicides and 55% of in-home fights and assaults, one or both of the individuals involved were drinking. Alcohol is inhibitory. Unfortunately, what it normally inhibits is an individual's reasoning powers. It makes them less self-aware and unable to consider the consequences. Testosterone is also part of the biochemical mix. Aggressive males given drugs to lower their testosterone lose their aggressive tendencies. These individuals tend to be edgier, more impulsive, with lower tolerance for frustration. When the testosterone level begins to decline, aggressive tendencies begin to decline as well. Men convicted of unprovoked violent crimes tend to have higher testosterone levels than men who commit nonviolent crimes. Males past puberty with high testosterone levels are more prone to delinquency, hard drug use, and aggressive responses to provocation. In contrast to the aggression causing testosterone, serotonin is a neurotransmitter that controls the effects of testosterone in the hypothalamus. And of course, testosterone in your hypothalamus is what gives you your sex drives. Low serotonin levels have been found in violence-prone children and adults because they don't have the serotonin to control their testosterone level. People at lower socioeconomic levels tend to have low serotonin levels, lower control. And of course, we know from looking at studies dealing with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, where it increases serotonin in the brain, that individuals who are taking an SSRI have a lower sex drive. And potentially they have a higher aggression drive than someone not taking SSRIs. The frustration aggression theory was first purported by Dollard and Miller just before World War II. The theory states that when someone is frustrated, they're blocked from achieving their goal-directed behavior, they respond with aggressive behavior. And this was the rationale behind the Japanese attack on the United States. The reason the Japanese attacked the United States was because we were blocking the sale of oil. We stopped selling gasoline and fuel to the Japanese, and we stopped selling them scrap metal from the United States. Often the aggression is not directly aimed at the frustrating entity, but is displaced on someone else. It is redirected at someone less dangerous. People living in fragile economic or political environments, people of low economic status, tend to react to economic disappointments with aggressive behavior, often in the form of a crime. Usually, these individuals suffer from deprivation, the realization that they don't have what someone else has. Relative deprivation is the realization that one does not have what a comparable entity has. When aggressive acts are rewarded, the individual may learn to act aggressively in the future. This occurs in youth hockey, on our playgrounds, and with terrorists. When terrorists are negotiated with, terrorist acts begin to increase. When they are punished, they tend to decrease. Albert Bandura first proposed his social learning theory back in the early 60s. His experiment with children modeling aggressive behavior has changed the way that we look at violent television programming and violent sporting events. Children of physically punitive parents tend to use aggression when relating to others. Looking at the genealogy of physically punitive families, such behavior can often be traced back several generations where the paper trail tends to end, but the abusive physical punishment didn't. 30% of abused children become abusive parents. That's 4 times the national rate. Absentee parents also lead to violent behavior. 70% of juveniles in detention have only one parent at home. American children raised without fathers are 7 times more likely to be abused, to drop out of school, become runaways, become unmarried teenage parents, and to commit violent crimes. 2-parent families have increased care, more positive discipline, more educational achievement, fewer uprootings, and a higher income. Subculture of violence. Researchers have discovered that certain types of people have gravitated to areas of the country where they could act out their aggressions. Southerners tend to advocate violence and corporal punishment. Murder rates are 4 times that of the average northern city, and spanking is more prevalent. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. 18% of non-whites and 36% of white Southerners believe that a man has a right to kill to protect his home, and are twice as likely to own a gun as a Midwesterner. Oh, I don't know. Okay. Researchers have discovered that pain induces both humans and other species to strike out at the closest target. Leonard Berkowitz has found that the aversive stimulation from pain to irritating conditions, uncomfortable noise, or temperature can trigger hostile aggression. This aversive stimulation can even take the form of dashed expectations and personal insults. Sorry. Researchers have long speculated that the warmer the temperature, the more aggressively people act. Drivers in Phoenix without air conditioners often react aggressively when stopped in traffic. Pitchers beam more batters during 90-degree weather than in weather below 80 degrees, though their control is comparable in both temperature ranges. Riots in the United States during the 60s and 70s tended to occur in hot weather as compared to cool weather. Usually in July and August. There's the Newark riots of 1967. Of course, I graduated from high school in 1967, so I remember this very vividly. When people are attacked or insulted, they are more likely to respond with aggression. Crowding is the feeling that there is too little space per person. People in densely crowded cities report feeling more fearful than people in less crowded areas. Even when the city has a lower crime rate, people still feel more uncomfortable on the streets when it's crowded. Researchers have discovered that aroused states, despite the cause of the arousal, will lead to a more aroused state if an emotional cue is introduced. Therefore, anger can lead to sexual passion, as can fear. People are more likely to react with extreme emotions after being stimulated with bright lights or loud noises, such as at a rock concert. Research by Leonard Berkowitz has shown that select items can be used as cues to aggression. Berkowitz used a gun to trigger more violent behavior. Anderson found that guns prime hostile thoughts and punitive judgments. Over half of all murders in the United States are committed with handguns. A handgun in the home is more likely to kill household members than intruders. And owners are 2.7 times more likely to be shot, sometimes by their own hand. The United States has 4 times the population of Great Britain and 16 times the murders. The United States has 10,000 handgun killings a year, while Australia has 12 and Canada has 100. I'm hiccuping. Whoops. Oh, great. There we go. Okay. Pornography and sexual violence. Researchers have found that violent pornography tends to give men a skewed idea of sexual response and tends to distort an individual's perception of how women actually respond to sexual coercion. Research shows that men who view erotic films have decreased attraction for their partner, have increased acceptance of extramarital sex, and have an increased perception of women in sexual terms. While storylines from Gone with the Wind to Down with Love purport that women often say no when they really mean yes, pornography takes romance and usually foreplay out of the equation and leaves only the sexual overpowering male overwhelming the resistance of the impassioned female. Depending on the type of pornography, pain, degradation, and injury may be a part of the equation as well. When men watch violent films, it tends to desensitize them to the depictions of violence and rape. Studies show that they become unsympathetic to victims of domestic violence and rate the injuries of victims as less severe. Correlational studies of the increase of pornography and rape cases show that as access to pornography increased, the number of rape cases increased. However, the connection between violent sex crimes and pornography may not be directly drawn. While rapists, child molesters, and serial killers tend to use more pornography than non-offenders, the pornography may be more of a symptom than a cause of their deviance. Interviews with serial rapist Ted Bundy related that he used sexually violent pornography to prime himself for the rapes and murders that followed. It is estimated that 28% of women in the United States have experienced a sexual coercive episode that would fit the criteria for rape. Most didn't label the episode rape because it didn't involve violence or a stranger. Rape statistics in Canada show 23% of women have been raped, Germany 17%, New Zealand 25%, the United Kingdom 19%, and South Korea 22%. It is estimated that 75% of stranger rapes and nearly all acquaintance rapes go unreported. Surveys of college-age males shows that a full 33% would consider sexual assault if they could be assured that they would never be discovered. Men who are the most likely to rape are sexually coercive, dominance demonstrated in their aggression, hostile toward women, sexually promiscuous. In many cases, pornography supports and cultivates this mindset. Televisions are more prevalent in homes than bathtubs or telephones. 2/3 of homes have 3 or more sets. The television is on an average of 7 hours a day. Each member of the family watches an average of 4 hours of programming. Women watch more television than men. Non-whites watch more television than whites. Preschoolers and retired people watch the most. Less educated watch more than the highly educated. 6 in 10 television shows contain violence. Fistfights were long drawn-out affairs, unlike reality, where injury usually limits the fight due to a broken jaw or broken hand. 3/4 of the time, the aggressors went unpunished. 58% of the time, the victims were not shown to exhibit pain. Only 5% of the violence was shown to have long-term consequences. 2/3 depicted violence as funny. Oh, I can't show you that. But you can come back and see this. That was the Monkees from 1968. It's kind of interesting. All this fighting's taking place, and it's supposed to be humorous. Children spend more time watching television than they spend in school. By junior high, the average child has observed 8,000 murders and 100,000 other violent acts. Some supporters of television violence and pornography as well purport that TV violence acts as a cathartic release, actually reducing the amount of violence. Research shows that television desensitizes people to violence. Television also does not represent a realistic world. It tends to have more male characters, 67% that's on television, there's 67%. In the real world, it's 51%. Most people aren't married. Only 10% of people on television aren't married. And in reality, only 61% aren't married. No, that's not right. 10% are married. Wait a minute. There's only 10% of the people on television that are married. And in reality, around the world, 61% of people are married. Most are blue-collar workers. 25% in the United States, or on television, are blue-collar workers, but in reality, 67% of the people in the world are blue-collar workers. Most seem to have no religious affiliation. Only 6% of people on television are religious, while 88% of the people around the world are religious. They consume more alcohol than normal. 65% or 45% consume alcohol, while around the world only 16% of people consume alcohol. Surveys of people who watch a great deal of television shows that they view the world as a more violent place than it actually is. They are more fearful of someone coming into their home and more fearful of going outside and being attacked. These individuals also are more likely to read aggression into others' behavior and interpret words as aggressive rather than neutral. Brian Mullen analyzed information from 60 lynchings that took place in the United States between 1899 and 1946 and discovered that the larger the number of people that attended the lynching, the more vicious the murder and mutilation. This is a form of de-individuation. Similar behavior can be seen with youth gangs, soccer fans, especially in England, soldiers, urban rioters, and school children in Scandinavia. That's Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. That's Scandinavia. This is called mobbing. The children will repeatedly harass or attack an insecure and weak schoolmate. Mob rules with a pack mentality, even in Scandinavia, among toddlers. European soccer violence, as weird as that seems. It's a game, guys. Come on. Catharsis. Psychologists suggest allowing people a harmless way to vent their anger and aggression. However, while catharsis seems to work with other emotions, with aggression it just seems to add extra fuel to the fire. Myers sees the only way of reducing aggression is to model and reward sensitivity and cooperation. And that is the end of the lecture. So I'll talk to you guys next week.